Good morning, beautiful Acumen community. I have to tell you, I'm so excited to be here. Jacqueline's been dreaming about this event for years, and looking out at these faces, I kind of see why. And it's not just the diversity and the beauty, the brilliant minds that are here. I've already detected, this beautiful human spirit that is so inspiring. I really think that if the world could see this moment, you, it wouldn't be thinking about turning in and drawing back. It would be thinking about embracing the global story, global diversity. And I would bet that if a future historian could somehow track the ripple effects emanating out from this place at this time over the next years, they would see remarkable consequences of impact really right across the globe. Because of you, because you are people who are committed to change. And the power of that and the power of amplifying each other is not to be underestimated. So it's exciting. I'm Chris Anderson. I'm a long-time Acumen supporter and believer, and it's really, I get to host this session, which is a total treat for me. And we are in for a treat. We're going to have stories of hope and change. There's some music. I've got an interview with two of Africa's most courageous and dynamic business leaders. But first of all, your own leader, a woman who I watch every day, working tirelessly, sleeplessly, for the organization she believes so much in. A woman who has inspired so many of us to find our better selves. A woman who carries the torch of moral leadership like no other. Your very own Jacqueline Novogratz.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chris. There's nothing like being introduced by your life partner. So you have to discount about 80% of what he said. But how about that East Africa Fellows welcome? You already had me shedding tears, and we haven't even started. So let me just add my own Kenya welcome. Karibu, everyone, to Naivasha, to Kenya. It is extraordinary to see all of you together. Really echoing what Chris said, if I could dream a world, here come the tears. It would look like this. It would look like you. For you are really what the world does need. We are a community that is looking to find a belonging that is so strong that it encompasses all of our individual uniqueness, all of our diversity. And we do so because we have committed to a statement of shared values, the Acumen Manifesto. We do so because we are committed to each other and we are committed to the poor. And so I just want to welcome you, and I want to thank those of all of you who have shown up from all over the world. We're not just the fellows, our sponsors who have made this event possible, our board members and team members who've worked for years, partners from all around the world, and 300 fellows from the 400 fellows across the world, 32 countries, over 11 years of cohorts. You're beautiful. And you're in Naivasha. Oh yeah. So Naivasha is an extraordinary place. You've seen it already. The word itself is actually a Maasai word that comes from a Maasai word, Naiposha, which means rough water because of the sudden storms that can descend upon the still lake. And I thought that was such an important metaphor, not only for the turbulent world that we live in, but for the work of social change, your work. And so I hope that Naivasha is not only reminiscent of that, but it becomes for you a memory of this gathering where you take time to renew and reflect, to connect and reconnect. But most important, that not a single one of you leaves here without committing to yourself to the work that the world needs of you. Urgent, conscious, work, because the stakes have never been higher in our lifetime. But before I go there, let me say a little bit about how we got here in the first place, and that requires going back to the beginning. Around the turn of the century, we saw that the old paradigms weren't working, particularly when it came to solving problems of poverty. We'd seen markets alone, we'd seen charity and governments alone, and yet the poor were falling further behind in terms of inequality. And so Acumen pioneered this idea of patient capital, that we could take philanthropy and invest long-term capital in those entrepreneurs who were daring to go where others wouldn't. Sometimes it could take 10 to 12 years. And over time, we began to develop a series of principles that for the world to change, we needed to think not only about shareholders and wealth accumulation, but stakeholders, to look at purpose, not just profit, to measure social impact, not just financial impact, and to define our success based on how the poor and vulnerable were treated. And we saw that it worked, and that it wasn't enough. Because to build these kinds of companies and organizations requires an extraordinary kind of person that is not driven by a single metric, but is holding all of these stakeholders, often in communities of people who are living on $1 or $2 a day that are political communities, bureaucratic communities, having to face a lot of corruption and complacency as well. And so what was needed was leadership. And more than that, it was a moral leadership that moved from a moral compass that was willing to live in the gray and navigate often very difficult trade-offs. And so in 2006, the Global Fellows Program was born. Each year, we took 10 to 12 diverse fellows from around the world. We trained them in New York, and then we placed them in some of our companies around the world for 9 months, and ask any global fellow you meet here. It's an intense experience. We did it deliberately so that they could have the experience of what it takes to build a company like that, and then over time go out and become architects of change themselves. And when you talk to the global fellows who are here, we can declare victory, because the world looks different because of them, because of you. You have taught us not only to build housing, but to build communities. You've brought human-centered design to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. You've created thousands and thousands of jobs and brought the principles of leadership training to workforce development and to building leaders across the world. You run impact funds not only globally, but in the cities and the rural areas of the United States. And we thought we were doing well, and then our regional advisors said it's not enough. Because countries like Pakistan and India and East Africa, and I dare say every country in the world now, needs that new kind of leader in much larger numbers. And so what they told us was that the fault lines that are dividing us in our countries are getting deeper and more entrenched. So we not only needed leaders that could execute and build, but that could navigate across lines of difference. And so we built the Regional Fellows Program in 2011. And this time we took a patient investing approach as well, but we thought in 20 years or more, finding 20 individuals a year in each of these 3 regions across lines of race, class, ethnicity, caste, geography, so that they could learn to confront each other and confront the possibilities of their country and also the ills. And then in 20 years or so, we would see some of our leaders running the biggest, most important social enterprises, leading government, and pushing civil society organizations, holding each other responsible and accountable, as well as supporting each other. And in the shorter term, we understood that these leaders were pushing the edges of innovation, and that is where innovation happens. And our dream was always that we would sometimes be able to invest in some of the companies that were showing real impact and the potential for clear financial viability. And thrillingly, that's already beginning to happen. What we started to see, though, over time, was that we were not just building a fellows program and a patient capital program and then measuring impact, but an ecosystem was starting to form. Think of it as a rich tapestry of color. We were seeing fellows connect with one another across region and build institutions together, like Irfan Kashabji, an East Africa fellow who built an affordable housing company and put on his advisory Javad Aslam from Pakistan. Last night I was talking to Suhani Mohan from India, and one of her strategies for distributing feminine hygiene products to the poor in India is to use her fellows as a major part of her distribution strategy. That's smart. We want to see more of it. It goes beyond the fellows. There are partners and board members here, individual and corporate, who are now working with individual fellows, providing financial support and mentoring. And that mentoring goes both ways. And then you layer on top of that, plus Acumen, where almost 500,000 people are taking courses, and you can start to imagine this interplay of people and philosophy, financial resources, ideas turned into action, and the sharing of insights from that so that we can truly change the world together. So that's why we're here in Naivasha. And last night people were teasing that I've been talking about this for 3 or 4 years, and it's true. But as I reflected, after being told that about 16 times last night, I was thinking, you know, in some ways the team and the universe conspire to hold me back a little. And the truth is, we are having this gathering at exactly the right time. Not only because the world is in a place that needs it, that needs you, but because Acumen wasn't ready for it. Now we are 400 fellows strong, 70 companies. We've got these hundreds and hundreds of partners, individual, corporate, and 500,000 people online who want to be part of a movement for social change. Now we can start to see what it looks like and imagine together what we might become. And that is part of what we are here to do in Naivasha. But to do that and imagine the future requires, we think, confronting 3 great battles. And we hope that we'll have time here, and you'll see it constructed throughout the agenda. And the first is the battle of hope over cynicism. I can't tell you how many emails I get from fellows around the world who talk about how eye-scratchingly, bone-crushingly frustrating it is to be fighting cynics all the time. But the deal is, the cynics are the ones who uphold the status quo, and you are here to change it. What's so thrilling to me, as someone who gets to see all of you, is how many of you fight it all the time and are emanating light. I think of the fellows in Peshawar, who after the tragic attacks that took the lives of 145 mostly school children showed up to open their schools day after day at great risk to themselves. I think of so many of you who come from and fight on behalf of wounded, degraded, often demeaned communities. And you do so with extraordinary heart. And you dare to build institutions of real beauty with and within them. And I think of how many of you refuse to pay bribes, refuse corruption, although your peers around you may be rising in status and wealth and rank by taking much easier decisions. But you didn't sign up for easy. Not if you are here and not if you are creating change. I also think that there's really good news in this, because we are at a time in the world where idealism may be the new strategic. Because as a world, we are so beaten down thinking that we have no leaders, that we are yearning to be convinced that goodness exists. So let this be a community that represents that goodness, and shine a light on each other when you succeed. And remember that when you make those hard decisions, people are watching. It matters. This afternoon, a number of you will be presenting your ideas to a group of judges for the Emerging Leaders Award that's been funded by one of our Acumen angels, Asha Jadeja. And I don't know who or if anyone will get funded, but if they do, it is not just their victory, it is our victory. It is the way we need to be thinking as a community. But it isn't easy. And it is especially not easy if you think about the second great battle. And Chris referenced it. That's the battle of reaching out when so much of the world wants to pull inward. Every one of our societies right now is divided. And everywhere we're hearing the cries of people who feel left out, anguished, often angry, sometimes violent. And many of them are clinging to old traditions and religions and not being open, we say. And yet, if we sit here and we try to be the open ones and we divide the world into the lovers and the haters, we will have done nothing for the world. And so I hope that we can use Naivasha to confront the internal tensions that exist in all of us, because they do. Probably the most eloquent encapsulation of this was an India fellow who was talking about how proud he was to post on Facebook a picture of himself with a Pakistani colleague, and how surprised he was to see immediately after feeling barraged by hate mail, and how painful it was to go home and feel rejection by different family members for consorting with the enemy. And I know that that story resonates whether you're Indian or Pakistani. He asked a really important question, maybe one of the most important questions of our time. Can I be a patriot and also a global citizen? How do we create a sense of belonging that holds our identity and diversity? Right now is the season of Lent for Catholics. Many of them, certainly practicing ones, are sacrificing and doing service. It connects them to each other. They feel a sense of belonging. And sometimes during during Ramadan, like my friend Bob Collymore, I fast. And it's always in that time of day when the sun is hottest and my thirst the deepest, where suddenly I realize that I'm connected to 1.5 billion people around the world who are doing the same thing at the same moment. And that feeling is profound. It's one of belonging. It's one of remembering what we're supposed to be doing. We have so much to learn from the beauty and power of these traditions that remind us. And yet, if to be fully of one religion means to reject the truths of another, we're simply denying those others of their humanity and thus degrading ourselves of our own. We must find a better way, and it can start in this community. And it means that we have to find a way to coexist while pledging our allegiance to a larger humanity. The poet Rumi said, "I am not a drop in the ocean, I am the ocean in a drop." And a few hundred years later, Walt Whitman wrote, "I am a multitude." That's the spirit we have to start with, but we can't come at it with arrogance. We have to come at it with humble respect for what those who fear and are pulling inward are, including ourselves. And here in Naivasha, we have a chance to do that. But it won't be easy, and I'm sure there are some of you who think, I don't know if it'll happen in our lifetime. The point is, it doesn't matter. We can build a single global community because that is where the world needs to go in this interdependent age. But the third great battle then is, how do we act despite the fear, despite the cynicism? Where do we start? And my hope is that we start right here, that we are a representative of that world. If you look around, we represent, I started counting the number of religions, not just the big Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, but starting to go underneath, Ismaili, Jain, I had them all, but many of them, they go on and on, across Baha'i, who we are, Ahmadi. So we have to share this with each other. We have to confront and understand. And we have to have the daring then to imagine this larger world. Think about how complex the conversations need to be. And again, we have the universes inside this dome. My husband and many of the ones who are focused on where technology is going thinks a lot about what's going to happen not only to jobs, but to humans. When the robots start replacing jobs, what will be the purpose of humans, he asks. And in this same room are people who are working every day with some of the poorest smallholders on the planet. They are bonded laborers who are trying to scratch out their survival with ancient implements, fighting the ravages of climate change and getting hit worse than anybody. How do we reconcile those two conversations? That is the challenge of our world, is to disentangle it and reconcile it. The only way we do it is to get above it. The only way we do it is to renew our institutions, democracy, capitalism. On Monday, I sat with the current class of Global Fellows and we asked, is capitalism breaking or is it fully broken? Either way, what we all agreed is that business as usual is no longer an option. We need new forms of organization that are defined not by wealth accumulation alone, but by the amount of human flourishing, by the amount of environmental possibility that is created within them. And that is what you represent through the companies you're building, the organizations, and through the community that you are creating. It's where we have the West and the East meeting. When we feel the most alive, the most soulful, is when in those moments when we know we are connected to every other human being, every other living thing. How do we start to build economic, political, social frameworks that start within that moral framework? What is the moral code that at least has the minimum to which we can agree, and we can build from there? And to do that, to fight these three battles, I ask that you keep three additional things in mind. One is to listen. This is an extraordinary opportunity that very few people get to have, given our wild diversity, our beautiful traditions, the hopes and fears that we have. So listen to each other, not only with your ears, but with your whole body, with your eyes. Listen not to convince or to convert, but to change yourself. Listen as an act of love. Embedded in that is the moral imagination. And second, speak your truth, even if through trembling lips. If you think you're the only one in the room who thinks that way, all the better. You'll probably find out that you're not. And if you don't speak that truth, you're not giving this community the chance to go out into the world and confront the stuff that we have to do together. So speak it. And third is to help us dream, to imagine. I talked about where we are as a community today. When I think 10 years in the future, we are not just hundreds, but we are thousands upon thousands of fellows going deeper within our countries and expanding across the globe. We are finding the best innovation where it exists in the world, and we are sharing it with the rest. We are connecting to financial resources and to companies that want to change the way they do business too. And we are starting to create a movement together. That's where I see us going. I want to understand what the possibilities that you see, and not just how Acumen can amplify and deepen, but how you as a fellowship, as a community, can build that world together. I know that we can make the impossible possible. I know that it can start here, because one of the great advantages of old age, or at least getting there, is I have seen so many of you grow. The fellows for more than 10 years in some cases, and some friends and partners and board members for 20 or 25 years. In this room are individuals who not only have created jobs, you have helped bring entire new ways of thinking to your communities and to the world. You have amplified the voices of others. You are extraordinary, and you have taught me and inspired me more than I can say, with your resilience and your grit, your toughness, your vision, and equally as important, your humility, your patience, your kindness, your generosity, and your love. And so, may Naivasha be like the Republic of Conscience, and may we all go home as its ambassadors. And I hope you, like me, would rather be here than any place else on earth. So have a great next few days.